Um, so what I'm really fascinated with, 2 years ago, you sent me a sort of a nearly finished version of Britain's Big Cat Mystery, and said, would I do some sort of intro saying to people, yeah, will you watch Britain's Big Cat Mystery, or get involved in some way? I was like, oh, if I got to do something for somebody now, okay, let's just watch this thing. And suddenly I was like, wow, okay, this is amazing. Yeah, I happily get on board and say something about this. And as the months progressed, I noticed more and more notable, not like myself, but notable people coming on and saying something positive about the documentary. That made me feel as if there was something about it that wasn't the norm. It wasn't the usual thing that we'd been expecting to see on television. And then later, of course, it was commissioned. It was aired on Blaze and some other channels. And now you have Panthera Britannia, which is also is it on Amazon or Vimeo? Where can people get that?
It's on Amazon Prime in England. It's on Amazon Prime,
okay.
And it's on Apple TV. And in the States, it's on Tubi, and there's a whole bunch of other streaming services like on Roku and stuff, but they're not live yet. Okay.
So there's the next part of the documentary, and something very significant has happened in this past 2 weeks. Now, you guys have released some DNA evidence to the public, and everybody's gone crazy about it. I even saw it on that Paul Joseph Watson show, that political commentator guy that talks about all that, all of the right-wing things going on. It popped up there, and I thought, well, what's going on with this guy? He's interested. All of the American podcasts are picking it up and saying, finally, there's some evidence here. So just run us through that. What was found? How did you find it? And where do we stand now with this evidence?
In 2017, my mother was a member of a Facebook group about Gloucestershire horse riding, and she saw someone posting a picture about weird livestock kill in her father's field. So we contacted them, and they invited us around. We went to look. I went with myself and Rick Minter, and we swabbed this dead lamb. It was big, mind, and smelly. we swabbed the body, and all those swabs were sent off to Warwick University. And they said that they weren't able to extract DNA or any intact DNA from those swabs. And that was it for that. And then at the end of the summer of last year, we were contacted by the farmer's daughter again, and there was another one, and we went and looked, and it was really sunny. We were experiencing a heat wave at that time, and it stank. And I made Carl Marshall examine this, thinking, and there was flies everywhere, maggots galore.
I mean, you deferred to the expert. That's why you did it, right? That's why he had to go and examine it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, go on, Carl. Yeah, one more take. Again. And he said he can handle it, and even started getting to me. So anyway, we had the calipers, and there was a canine, well, what we think were canine tooth impressions or puncture marks with like maybe two nails. What's that? I don't know what that is. Maybe 3 to 4 inch gap.
Wow.
So it could be a dog, but it could be something else. I mean, when you're making a film about big cats, you're thinking, oh, that looks like a cat bite. But anyway, it was too ambiguous because it had dried out, stinking, secondary predation, maggots. And there was a load of wool spread out across the ground, much similar to what there was the time before in the prior visit that we did. And then we checked the perimeter, and the field had really good fencing around it. But what it did have on the top, because it was on a hill, so right at the top of the hill, on that end boundary, there was a stone wall, like an old stone wall maybe. So something could jump over that easily into the field, but it would have difficulty getting out because it's obviously high to get out, easy to get in. And there was just a bunch of like wool and all sorts on there, and we just bagged it up. And to be honest, Carl thought it was all sheep. So anyway, we bagged it up, thought nothing of it, and then we had a professor who does hair morphology look at this sample when he said he was, what was the word, suspicious of it. In that, there's something, he said there were several different species and all these different samples, like some obviously sheep, some cattle, whatever. But he wouldn't say yes or it was or no it wasn't. So we proceeded to get the DNA test done using mitochondrial, which is meant to be really good for species analysis. Like previously, we used cheaper, less advanced techniques. And with hares, never actually yielded any result. It was always unable to extract DNA. And we, when we used scats in the past, we'd always get vulpus vulps. They always give it to you in Latin names, but that's a fox, right? So it'd just literally always be fox. And once we had, when we filmed Cat Hunters, we had European rabbit, but in that case, it was obviously the prey animal in the scat.
I see.
But, we couldn't tell what had eaten it. So it was, again, inconclusive. We used this mitochondrial, which is quite expensive, actually, but it's really good for species identification. So the lab did that, and then I got the phone call, and I was like, "What is it, Vulpus vulps?" Then and she's like, "No, we've got a leopard, 90 point, something, 99.9 something Panthera pardus." And then I asked, because the theory is all these animals, well, that's what I think, they all stem from the pet trade from the 1970s, although there was accounts going back a lot earlier than that, like 1600s, all the way back to the Romans, but you don't know if there was a sustained, releases in that time to keep the population going.
And not at this volume, anyway.
Yeah, not at this volume. I forgot where I was going with that. What was I talking about?
Well, just it came back as leopard, essentially.
It came back as leopard, subspecies. So I wanted to know whether we could ascertain what subspecies this leopard could have been, because these leopards that were in the pet trade, they could have come from Africa, India, anywhere, and obviously some people think that they could be hybridizing due to the lack of available mates. So some people theorize that we could have like these puma leopard hybrids, or even possibly designer cats, what they call them,
F1 savannah cats,
like savannas. I mean, there was one that escaped in London, wasn't there? From someone in Chelsea.
There's a lady that walks one around here, and I think it's about a meter long, well, no, maybe not a meter, but just slightly short of that with the tail. And first view, before I heard about these species and saw this thing, I think it was off the lead one day, or it was sort of running around in the park. I thought, what the hell is that? Is this a British wildcat? And it wasn't. She came eventually. She got a hold of it. She put the lead back on this thing, and I just found out about the savannas, and there was a whole new world opened up there suddenly of these cats that occasionally do get out into the countryside, and I'm sure account for some sightings. But could those types of cats could they breed with leopards?
I mean, I'm not a zoologist, so I couldn't answer that, but obviously puma is Felis patus and leopard is Panthera, but they can interbreed, although it's debatable whether the offspring would be fertile. I think Baron Leigh says in the film that the females may be, but the males almost never are. I think that's what it said, don't quote me. And obviously the other interesting thing is the melanism, the fact that all the sightings are generally black. You do get the occasional slightly coloured cougar, but the majority are black, and melanism is passed on genetically. So, I mean, I saw the cat I saw was black. I'd like to think I could tell you what species it was, but I couldn't. So it's big and black, and it had a very shiny coat because my car lights were reflecting off of it.
I mean, this is always the case, isn't it? What's interesting about that, and a few years ago, I had considered whether or not Britain unofficially could hold one of the largest populations of melanistic leopards in the world as a theory, because I thought, well, actually, it's quite rare in nature in the countries in which they predominate, leopards. and yet it would have been a very popular pet to have during the 60s and 70s because they're very beautiful. These melanistic leopards or jaguars, perhaps more likely leopards. And after they were released, allegedly, could they have then gone on to propagate, as you say, this melanism, this hereditary condition, and unofficially create one of the largest populations of melanistic leopards in the world in a country in which they're not supposed to live? I mean, is that a possibility at all? What do you think about that theory?
Well, a lot of people will come out and say straight away, "Oh, there wouldn't be enough. The habitat's not right or there's not enough prey." But I completely disagree. I think that it'd be like shooting fish in a barrel for a leopard. There's endless amounts of pheasants and rabbits, and we have still plenty of woodland. So I think that the habitat could sustain them, but do I think that there's enough genetic material for this population to be healthy, or do I think that this population is fragile, or if you like, for interbreeding, could die out? I think potentially. I mean, there's a lot of questions there. But of course, to know those answers, people got to take it seriously and investigate it. And that might be going on. It might not be going on. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, it's just easier and probably better for the cats, and for us by coexisting, in each other's sort of, well, definitely them in our mythology. But I like the fact that they're a mystery.
And so they're not officially a part of the British sort of fauna at this time. Do you think that's more of a positive thing?
Yeah, I do, because what's the consequences of these animals being officially disclosed? I mean, I'm afraid to take my kids out to the forest because of the panthers, or my livestock. I want money from death row. There's all these other questions that would arise. But then when we look, these things have been here at least since the 70s.
Yeah,
there hasn't been any incidents, if you like. So why would we worry about it now?
Yeah. So are you saying that there's been no attacks? I have heard of some interactions where people have been allegedly either chased or mildly injured or pounced upon and then immediately left afterwards, which would indicate that perhaps the cats were surprised or angered in some way. A few people have also disclosed to me that they were chased while walking their dogs, and they thought that the animal was after their dog, not them.
Yeah, I've heard stuff about dogs. There was something in the press last year. I think it was a staffy had a laceration on its head, and the owner said that. And there was obviously the young lad back in the 90s, but that came out to be a hoax, I think.
He was a school friend of one of my best friend's brothers in Tintin. He was in Tintin, yes, and allegedly he claimed, the brother of the friend, that is, not the kid himself, that this kid was like the school fool, and he had and I've never met him, so I'm not calling him a fool if you're out there somewhere, kid who was lacerated from Tintin, but he had allegedly walked up, seen it in the field, and yanked its tail, and it turned around, swatted him, and ran off. That was the story at the time. I seem to remember that was coming back.
Sounds like a dangerous game, if I'm honest.
It does, but it also sounds like something a teenage boy would do if he was, a little on the daring and not particularly cautious sort of character when seeing a very strange animal in the field that's not supposed to be there. It's a teenage boy sort of dare-like thing to do, isn't it?
Is it possible? Looking for it. When I was a kid, we had. It sounds bad now, but we was both at the Scouts. About probably 11. We used to live on the Somerset Mendips near a place called Crooks Peak. And we would go looking for the cat, because at the time we used to hear it in the local village gossip, livestock. And it was in the 90s. There seems to be a lot of activity in the 90s. And we used to go looking for this thing with a BB gun, where, of course, it was fun.
But don't you think that's a lot like people who go, well, I think it's a lot like people who go looking for Bigfoot, actually. There's only been one time in the forest when I was uncertain whether something was in there with me, and I could hear footsteps and things. And I think it was a deer now, coming to think of it. It was in Scotland. And I'd been like hours into the forest. It was really deep. And I thought I'd seen a man-like figure up the hill, sort of ducked behind a tree, but I think was, in the corner of my eye, floaters or something. Anyway, it was at that point I suddenly realized, well, hang on a second. If this is a real creature and you're stuck in the forest by yourself with it, that's a really shit situation to be in. And I think it's the same with the big cats. You go looking for something you want to find, but don't expect to find. And that's the same thing, isn't it? You with your BB gun with your friends, looking for a big cat, not really expecting that you're going to have to face it off with your BB gun in hand, hopefully,
Well, an
a
interesting
viable
story was
deterrent.
at that time I used to work for a sheep farmer. Well, my parents volunteered me to work for a sheep farmer in Lambing. And this guy said that he had at the time a Toyota Hilux, and he'd lost a couple of animals, and he saw it and he drove after it and he took a shot at it.
Wow.
And this thing outran his Hilux.
Wow.
He said it was a big black cat. I tried to get him to do an interview, but he moved his sheep farming business to New Zealand.
Okay.
So it's a bit difficult to get the interview. But something that I had mentioned, he was during the course of Panthera Britannia investigation, we uncovered at least, I mean, not all of them are definite, but I would say they're fairly potentially that they could be something in it was that the amount of released cats. I had it down to 7 just in
total.
Yeah, just Devon. That's ones we know. And then the other day I was reading comments on social media under the article after it went out, and there was someone like, we know a guy in Devon, a drug dealer, had somebody just let him go. He got bored of them. And then you read the comments, and then you just see how many people have seen cats, and they just come out the woodwork. And how many people know people releasing them as well. I mean, it's not. Yeah. I mean, it's more than you would think, I think.
Who is that famous big cat keeper in the Malvern Hills? Lou something.
Lou Foley.
Lou Foley. Okay. Was it? Did he claim he had released them, or a friend of his posthumously claimed he had released them?
He had his friend Leslie Maiden, and he confesses in a BBC Midlands Today clip that he released a jaguar, actually of all things, onto the Pennines. And then a cougar a week later.
Wow.
And, there's some eccentric people back then with animals.
And, of course, there's those 3 pumas that belong to Mary Chipperfield from the Chipperfield Circus that mysteriously disappeared en route to the zoo.
Well, yeah, funnily enough, Leslie made them work for her as well.
Oh, really? It's all a rich tapestry of shady characters who love dangerous animals.
Well, you think about it, though. You've got, I don't know what you'd call him. Like, you got Pet Bagheera. He likes to knock around a bowl of wool. He's quite friendly, really, just like a domestic cat, just scaled up. Then suddenly you can't have him. What are you going to do? You're going to let him be destroyed? Or you're just going to let him live his days out?
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned this actually, I think, in the documentary, didn't you, that even though in 1976 these really, I think there were really, really prohibitive costs and conditions that were associated with, I've got them here somewhere, with keeping the big cats, like an enclosure with enough room to take exercising. That was what does it say here? So it's in section 3. CNF of the Act. It says any animal concerned will at all times of its being kept only under the authority of the license be held in accommodation which secures the animal will not escape, which is suitable regards construction size, temperature, lighting, ventilation, drainage, cleanliness, suitable for the number of animals proposed, and where its accommodation is such that it can take adequate exercise. Now, how big does the enclosure that you have to build suddenly after having this thing tied up on lead on the farm?
One thing, it sounds like civil servants were a lot more effective at their jobs then than they are now. I couldn't imagine them checking up on all these people.
No, well, gosh, did they check up? But apparently there was no provision to rehouse the animals until 1981. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, there was a loophole. Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Okay, so you could legally, technically, let them go.
That's right.
Wow. Okay. And what would you do? I mean, if I'm just thinking, if I had a big cat, then how would you get it destroyed if that was the decision that you took? Is that a service that the local vet would
I don't like that
undertake.
word destroy. I mean, if you couldn't rehome it,
Mm,
or then I'm guessing that it wouldn't even be your decision; it'd be seized from you.
mm, mhm. Okay. So they just disappeared, and now we have them. Now I don't know if I told you this when we were out last on a little shoot, but my sister-in-law, my brother's partner, she was driving in a place called Wenvo, which is between Barry and Cardiff in South Wales, maybe about 2, 3 months ago. And suddenly the girls, the daughters in the car said, "Look, there's a bear in the field. There's a bear." And they pulled over, and actually, she said what she saw, she's got no interest in the subject at all, was a lioness that was all black walking around in the field. And they watched it for some time. And she was shocked. She was shocked thinking this thing had escaped from a local zoo or park of some kind. And she checked, she found nothing. She contacted me and I said, "No, this is one of the locals, born in this country, likely born to a cat born in this country even 2 or 3 times before." What type of situation do you think we're heading into? Now, you said you're concerned about the viability, the genetic viability of the species, but sightings do seem to be more commonplace and they do seem to be widespread throughout the entire country. What kind of situation do you think we're going to in the next 20 or 30 years? Will these big cats be like the grey squirrel or the Canada goose, where our descendants won't even know, most of them, that they were never native to the country? Or do you think it might go a different way altogether?
But I think, firstly, a lot of the sightings are mistaken identification. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I see a lot of the photo stuff, and it's ambiguous. And especially even with our article, they kept putting this stripy ginger tabby
Yeah, I've
cat
seen it. Yeah.
on it, and it's just like, what are you doing? But then, I mean, the DNA is quite serious. Then you put that
Mm.
on it, and then it makes it not so serious. So maybe that's what we want. I don't know. But as far as population, I mean, I really couldn't tell you. I'm not a scientist.
Mm.
I'd like
But
to
you've
think
taken reports from all over the country, Matt,
they
and
are. Yeah,
you can see the dispersion and the frequency. And of course, these are solitary animals largely that have
we got them
large
from
territories.
Inverness in
Mm.
Scotland, where they captured the cougar back in
Uh-huh.
I
Mm.
think it was the 70s or the
Mm.
80s. I can't remember now. Sorry, it's late. And that's obviously taxidermied in the museum up there.
Mm.
So you got that in Inverness. And then, you got all the releases in Devon that we feature in the film. I mean, that's
Mm.
the one end of the country to the other.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. I don't really know what's going to happen. I'm excited to know that they're out there, but there's something I think it's an open question. Clearly there has been no fatalities, and I think you mentioned earlier that uh, finding food for big cats like this in our country is like shooting fish in a barrel. I personally think that's the reason why there have never been any human fatalities. There really is no need to seek any other sustenance other than the 33 million plus rabbits, or the 5 million deer, or the 33 million sheep that roam the country, 16 to 18,000 of which are killed by dogs every year, and it could easily be excused away as dog kills and not big cat kills. So I don't think we're looking at a situation where people will be injured, but I just wonder what will happen once we get that definitive footage or a capture of a big cat, and the government has to get involved.
I mean, it does. I feel like it doesn't matter what you get in terms of footage, photos. It'll always be, considered. Is it authentic? Is it this? Is
Mm.
it that? I mean, actually, there was a picture last week that allegedly some guy got an Exmoor, and it was he was a bird watcher, and I sent it off to a forensic
Mm.
digital guy, and yeah, he's like pulled it to pieces. He's like, no, this has been doctored. So
Is this the one that's off in the distance, kind of walking down a disused
oh no,
trail?
this is like it's Hollywood headshot. It's like too good to be true. It's like it's got
Oh,
this
okay.
lovely landscape of Exmoor, and then there's
Oh, I know the one.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've obviously
Mm.
they've rotoscoped and masked the grass into the
Mm.
foreground, and then all the depth of fields look right. So, like if you just look at it, it looks like it's good. They've done a good job,
Yeah.
whoever it was. But when it went through the forensic
Mm.
analysis, they were able to take it apart. But So as long as stuff like that's going on the
Mm.
subject, it's never going to be.
No.
No, it's always going to have the believers, the non-believers.
Well, we need a live specimen, right? I suppose we need a live specimen in captivity, captured
Well,
from
they got the
the
taxidermied one
wild.
in Inverness.
That could be a one-off, though,
And
couldn't
that
it?
was
I
cool.
think,
But it was a
yeah,
pet. It was a pet. It was
yeah. There you go. So I think there's
Felicity.
that.
That was the name. Felicity.
Felicity. Ah, okay. Yeah, I do remember something quite a quite a sort of uncomfortable taxidermied face. Sort of strange look in the face as well. You talked about hybrids earlier, and obviously, if there's pumas and big cats and a few slots and other things wandering about the place, there is the possibility that things could become hybridized. I remember speaking to a farmer in Yorkshire who described having seen them in his fields from time to time, and once when he was baling hay with the tractor for his horses in a field that had lots of rabbit warrens. He said that one of them passed by his farm. He could have reached out from the tractor and touched it, but he said this thing was about 2.5 feet long, maybe only knee height, but it didn't look like a juvenile animal. And I wondered, could they could they be growing smaller over time to deal with the smaller prey items like rabbits and other things?
Well, firstly, like a puma put when they were forcibly bred in captivity, they were like dwarf size,
Mm.
like that. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, if it was a leopard to evolve to a small animal, I mean, it takes thousands of years for animals to make significant changes. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that in
Yeah.
20 years you'd be getting sort of, you know.
Sure. Perhaps that's the hybridized side of the animal. I mean, I know that's a touchy subject for a
Interesting. I
lot
don't
of.
know if you saw it this week. I saw my mother actually sent it to me. It was on a David Attenborough page. It was a Canadian lynx that was melanistic.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But that doesn't normally affect pumas. I don't think there's ever been a registered case of a melanistic puma, has there?
In America, what do they call it? The Florida panther in America.
Mm.
I mean, there's rumors of it. I mean, it's only, all it is just like. I mean, I think it's possible.
I think melanism is possible for all
I
animals.
mean, you see the amount of
Yeah.
things that are albino and
Mm.
melanistic. I mean, it seems to exist in most mammal species.
Have you heard of stories in China and India and other places, mostly stories from the distant past now, of blue tigers? Have you ever read about these before?
I've never heard of a blue tiger.
Blue tigers, yeah. So there's something to do, well, it's theorized. Dr. Carl Schuker, the cryptozoologist, theorized that it could be something to do with some missing, I think, genes on one of the alleles that could cause this blue tint. The tiger. There were lots of big game hunters, and also in Chinese folklore, I suppose, and mythology, there's lots of stories of these blue tigers appearing from time to time. And it just reminded me, you said about the possible black pumas, that in nature finds a way. There's always some possibility for. Yeah, did I Goldblum you? Sorry.
Yeah.
I did it without the stuttering or the pauses though, which is good. And Jeff, we all love Jeff. But nature does find a way, and maybe, as you said, we are looking at some hybrids here. I've seen some rather suspect, occasionally big cat pictures here in the past of cats that do appear to be very big, possibly leopard-sized, possibly
I've seen
puma-sized,
a
but
lot of
with
large
pointed
black
ears.
blurs. Yeah, black blurs, large ones. I mean, just the
But
size.
I'm talking about this strange sort of domestic ear shape as well. Sometimes this pointed ears on some big cats. Have you ever seen anything?
Yeah, I
Have you seen
mean,
pictures like that?
I mean, yeah, so it's like almost like a melanistic serval. Yeah,
Mm,
quite lean body, like very athletic, kind of lean, not stocky.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, with the more pointed ears, I have seen stuff like that. Yeah.
that would make sense. So, tell us about what are the next steps for the documentary, because you're filming a new segment to Panthera Britannia right now, aren't you?
Yeah, so we've taken some stuff out and we put some new stuff in. So there's a couple of bits of new science. There's new forensic analysis on some of the imagery. And there's some new faces, and some of the old faces have gone just to separate it more from the previous versions.
And do you think with the new techniques that you're employing at the end of the field, there's a possibility of other discoveries like the hair that you discovered of the leopard in Gloucestershire?
What do you mean in relation to cats, or
In big cats, yeah, absolutely.
what else could we discover? I mean, like you say, the anything really left is better video photo evidence or the body.
And have you considered any, I suppose, any hunting or tracking techniques, the possibility of capturing the animals, or are there any legal ramifications for carrying out such an activity?
So, like most of the traps that they would use in countries where they do catch them are illegal here. Yeah, like snares and stuff. But the South African fella Trevor, who actually did actively trap problem animals in South Africa, there are ways to do it. You just need to know what you're doing. And I feel like people in Britain, we just don't have that skill set, to be honest.
Well,
Like him.
yeah, I think and that applies to lots of genres. It's the same thing with the Bigfooting genre. I've been shocked how many times people have gone out with anything to cast a footprint with, or even a tape measure or something for scale. A little bag or some tweezers. Yeah, it's a little bio bag and some tweezers to collect your hair samples.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm working on something at the moment. One of my friends has recently gone on an expedition to Indonesia looking for orang pendek.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I've got some casts upstairs.
Have you?
Yeah, but we need to get them 3D analyzed and stuff to send them off to Dr. Meldrum.
Yes, I'm sure he'd be more than happy. Who is it that's gone off? Is it Richard or Carl or one of those guys?
Yeah, Carl. Yeah.
Carl, oh, great, fantastic.
I don't know if this is classified. Sorry, Carl. But we're still working on it, so we're getting it all analysed now.
Okay, but the tracks perhaps are classified. But Carl and Richard going off to Indonesia, that's not a surprise to anybody.
There was another discovery, but I'm not going to say where it was. But they did find something else significant.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to. I have messaged him actually. I'm gonna have to drag him on here when he's back.
Of course. Have you got your tinfoil hat ready for tomorrow?
Yes, I do. I've got my tinfoil hat, and I'm also, I've done the tea leaves and everything ready just in case. I've asked for permission. So, what is the mission tomorrow? It's a haunted hotel,
and it's meant to be like one of the most haunted pubs in Suffolk, and I think it even had a highwayman's ghost there.
Wow! Okay.
So we're going there as part of the first episode of Weird Britain, where we also, as you were there, we did Rendlesham Forest, and we looked at the legend of Black Shuck, which is like really interesting, the mythology and folklore.
Yes, yeah, I wrote a bit about that. I think it's amazing. It's an amazing.
A Black Shuck festival. We're going to go and film there in Bungay, where I allegedly went to the church. But like for me, I like folklore. It's interesting, isn't it? It's part of our history. So
it is, and I think it tells you a lot about people as well. One, there's always a kernel of truth somehow. It's in some of the folk legends that you hear. Something did happen at some point, and it's always interesting to try to work out what the something was. It's the same with dragon lore. Sometimes when you look at the stories, of people killing dragons and defeating serpents and the like in their local towns and neighborhoods, they're not very frivolous stories. They're usually quite mundane.
Serpents and dragons. It sounds like ex-wives, if you ask me.
Yeah, killing dragons, exactly, or ex-wives' mothers, right? So, yeah, absolutely. Are you in the ex-wives club? No.
Sorry,
you don't have an ex-wife. You've been married once.
No, I'm far too young.
Okay, yes,
I'm still alive. Yeah.
And I'm going to just pretend that I'm far too young to have an ex-wife. I don't have one, but I'm far too young. Yeah, so I think all of that stuff is very interesting. But with the big cats as well, there were stories you mentioned in the past, in the distant past too, of cat-like animals prowling the country.
So when we were investigating Panthera Britannia, we went right back to, obviously everyone says Roman times, did Romans bring them here? They brought a lot of other stuff here.
Yeah.
In Cirencester, they have the Corinium, which is like a sort of a small scale version of the Colosseum in Rome.
Yeah.
And it's possible that they definitely had spectacles there, but did they have gladiatorial combat? We don't know. Did they have? But then if they did, what would they be fighting? Because they, in the continent, they fought big cats quite a lot. And in some of the Samian-ware pottery, there is sort of designs of gladiators fighting big cats. So that's quite interesting, and that's also where the Panthera Britannia came from. That, but there was a few other examples, throughout history in the 1600s, 1700s, right to the present day. I mean, but from Roman times, you got to think that means that's a long time ago. It's like 2,000 years.
Well, it's a long time to stay out of sight, I suppose. It's the good point. Yeah, I mean, there's
who's the champion? Bigfoot or the black cats hide and seek champion?
From the British perspective, it would have to be the woodwolves because we see the big black cats all the time, don't we? Even now, so that's they're not particularly good at hiding. If you think about the number of sightings. They're just clearly, mostly, primarily nocturnal and living in very rural places and hard to find. There was, by the way, talking about the Roman Colosseums and bringing big cats. There's a lovely mosaic in Gloucestershire, isn't it? In Woodchester, the Orpheus mosaic is in the Roman village there of a lion. That's
actually. I'm not sure. I think there's two. The one in the Corinium Museum in Cirencester is also. He calls it the Orpheus mosaic. I'm not sure if it's the same one and it was moved, or if there's two.
Oh, really?
Ones. But what was cool? So it's huge. It's round and it's absolutely massive. So we got our drone and I flew it in the museum inside.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Span above it, and sort of nice. But there's definitely, leopards on it, and I think the god of wine who rides his chariot. I guess that's
Bacchus.
Bacchus, being pulled by these leopards.
And I suppose that's
how you arrive in style, right?
Yeah. In a drunk in a chariot pulled by leopards. Yeah.
Why not?
That's how I always turn up to the arena to watch some poor unfortunates get torn to bits by lions. My leopard-drawn chariot. Off my face on wine. That's clearly it's the only way to arrive. And I guess what I'm interested in is what we're going to see next, the Panthera Britannia. You think this could turn into, because you had the Cat Hunters series that you did a pilot for, could this turn into something that's as an ongoing series of documentaries, or are you think you're more likely to move on? As you see with Weird Britain and a few other paranormal subjects in the country.
I think I've gone as far as I can, and my team have with cats. I mean, we've dug out so much from the history. I don't think there's much. There is obviously more, but I feel like the main things that we've got, and those people, a lot of them are quite old now because we're talking, from a long time. I feel like we covered it well. I mean, there's always going to be new photographs, new videos. That's going to happen, but I feel like for me, I've done what I can, and I want to move on to other stuff. I mean, I always like cryptozoology and weird paranormal stuff. I also like factual stuff, and I've actually written a movie, which is actually big cat based.
Okay,
it's a comedy. So,
really?
Yeah, it's called Claws, and it's quite funny. It's a bit like Hot Fuzz.
Okay. Oh, I love that idea. Okay. Oh, if Simon, if Simon Pegg, Nick Frost could be the leads, that would be amazing.
He'd be amazing. Yeah.
They would be amazing. I think it would suit them, even though they're sort of a bit crimbly now and old themselves. I do think. I mean, that series they did, the paranormal series, didn't really go so well.
It wasn't very good. I don't think it was written very well.
No,
with Cat Hunters, it was great, but there seems to be a stigma towards the subject. They were still making TV shows about it in the early 2000s. You had obviously the Monster Quest did one, but that was America. America's not going to have that stigma, but certainly I think with the terrestrial channels, yes, I mean, even Chris Packham, that was at X Creatures.
Mm.
You know, and I think they did do stuff before, but if you were to mention it, they like to distance themselves, and I don't really know why that is. I find it a bit odd because it's an interesting subject. A lot of people are interested in it, and yet it seems to just be pushed to one side, and I don't know why that is.
Do you think that's part of our British disposition, in the sense to believe in anything fanciful is almost it almost
I do
lacks
think that, yeah,
credibility.
I
So you
do
have
think
to,
that.
yeah, even if you're way into ghosts and
I think
cryptids.
it's
And I
something
found
like
myself sometimes saying, I'm a hopeful skeptic. Well, I'm not a skeptic in any way whatsoever. I look at the evidence skeptically, but I'm clearly not a skeptic.
I think something common in cryptozoology and science is that people at the top, the academics, they like to quote
Mm.
books written by dead people, and that
Mm.
is gospel. And if anything challenges that, it's
Mm.
pure nonsense. But yet they won't ever go out in the field to look for it. They'll just quote that book.
Yeah, I've run into that once or twice. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll give you that condescending sort of,
Oh, the
yeah.
condescension is a strange one, because essentially, if you're scientific, if you're being academic in your evaluation of the evidence that's been presented to you, even if that's anecdotal evidence, you don't need to disparage anybody or be disparaging to anybody, or to put them down, or to resort to ad hominem
The best line I heard was,
attacks.
"That's not a cat, but I can't tell you what it is."
Okay.
That was someone commenting on one of our things. It was like, well, it can only be, it's in England, you don't know what it is, but it's not, it just doesn't make
Yeah,
sense. It's like a double negative.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I can tell you what it's not, right? I just can't tell you what it is.
Yeah.
And I've come across this time and time again, especially with the Bigfoot phenomena. It's it's impossible, and you get this with Nessie as well, from the things like the plesiosaur theory. It's impossible because we know that blah blah blah, and then you look back to what they knew 20 years ago, and you realize that they've completely changed what they knew then to decide what they know now, and that's the Bible, that's the gospel, and you can't move past this until there's this big paradigm shift again, and everybody now accepts this new set of facts that nobody's allowed to question. And society has always been that way. Only have to look at, the earth was flat, the earth is a sphere, it's a globe. These things threaten people, I suppose. Even if it threatens the general worldview, it's still a threat. Man,
I do
think
see
it's
parallels though between the British big cat phenomenon and Bigfoot. I think the same things happened. Like if there is something, I don't really know much about Bigfoot, but if there was something in it, the amount of ambiguous stuff, hoaxes, and like just stuff like that, it's going to muddy the waters, and then you
yes,
just end up. It's like a stalemate, and it's the same sort of thing.
it definitely is, and I think a lot of the hoaxing in cryptozoology, and perhaps with big cats as well, comes from the fact of that you can be involved in the genre, in the research, in the study, really without any credentials. Now, I don't really believe in credentialism. I think if you've got the passion and the skills, you should just get involved. That's my view on it. However, it's not an industry that has a lot of money in it, and most of the funds are made through merchandising and documentaries and the rest of it, and that creates a need for continuous content. Because of the content and the lack of any viable or tangible evidence or footage, even, people hoax, to get that attention, to get those likes and clicks and sell those t-shirts. And it's sad, but I don't think we're going to be able to get away from that anytime soon.
I mean, you could just wear a Chewbacca Star Wars suit in America, and there's your hoax. I mean, it's a bit easier up there, isn't it? It's man's side.
But there's some AI ones now as well coming out. There's one that's going around the various pages at the moment, with this huge Bigfoot-like creature standing next to somebody in the old days, classic AI hoax, 1800s kind of photo. Mm-hmm. And even on the photo itself, it says made by the AI project. And everybody, it's small, but it's there, it's clear, and everybody says, wow, this is amazing. Wow. Just look at that.
Still tell it's AI though,
You can tell, but many people can't. They're that desperate for it. I also saw a clip of a heron just with its neck above the water, sort of wrestling a fish, I suppose. The fish was quite big and heavy, and that was in its mouth, and it was moving around in the water, but you could only see the neck. I'm guessing because of the weight of the fish, and it was trying to wrestle it to shore. Nessie is found, and the amount of likes and comments you get underneath that, compared to something that's possibly viable evidence, or at least not sensational and has something to it, is kind of sad. It's the Red Circle Brigade again, and
Yeah, it just muddies the waters, so you can't ever make an argument without this stuff being dug up, from elsewhere to delegitimize it.
That's the truth. That's the truth. I think we'll leave it there, Matt. But I just thank you so much. Anybody watching, listening, go and find Panthera Britannia online. If you can get to see Britain's Big Cat Mysteries while on Blaze or anywhere else that may be showing, you really have to. It's great evidence. It's great footage. They both are really amazingly informative and groundbreaking documentaries. Matt, it's been great. Thanks so much.